You know what, I'm still in kind of a Dragon Ball mood, so I don't know, let's just rank all the Dragon Ball movies. You can't stop me. But I'm only going to be including things that are classified as movies, so no Bardock Father of Goku or History of Trunks. If I dedicate time to every weird special and TV animation, then I'm gonna be here all day, so again, only movies. Next video is probably going to be Venture Brothers Season 3, so stay tuned if you're interested in that. If you end up liking this type of ranking content, maybe leave a like and comment down below so I know people are interested. Or, if you dislike this video and think my taste in Dragon Ball movies is pure dookie garbage, leave a dislike and a comment down below. Engagement is engagement either way. Also, for any of you lovely maniacs who may want to support the channel, I now have a Patreon. Link is in the channel description. I'd like to put it in the video description, but YouTube is against me doing that for some reason.
I wonder what's for dinner.
The first three movies based around OG Dragon Ball are interesting because they're kind of a remix / retelling of events from the series all the way up until around the Red Ribbon Army arc. So, Blood Rubies is basically a retelling of the Emperor Pilaf arc with glossier animation, worse pacing, and Emperor Pilaf has been replaced with someone a lot more competent and dangerous. None of these three movies is even an hour long, so yeah, they're just speedrunning every major plot point they can get their hands on. I guess I can appreciate the brevity in a franchise that's kind of infamous for all the filler content it has, but really I wouldn't recommend Blood Rubies unless you really want a streamlined version of the early arc of Dragon Ball. It is, however, the closest thing we're ever going to get to my dream idea of Goku versus Nikocado Avocado because Toei keeps ignoring my calls and emails.
You play as Dracula. Explore over 3 levels.
Sleeping Princess in Devil's Castle is kinda weird even by the standards of these three movies. I guess it's the most unique of the bunch since they're not really adapting too much of the original series and are trying something a little more original. Basically, Goku meets Krillin for the first time and then Master Roshi sends the two off to find a girl, similar to what happened in the manga. But in this case, their journey takes them to a weird monster-filled castle in the middle of Gary, Indiana. The main bad guy of this movie has kind of a cool design, but that's really all he has going for him cause he's just really lame otherwise. I don't know, man. I figure if you name your bad guy Lucifer, he should be a little more impressive than this guy here. Dude just shoots a couple of shitty laser beams from his hands and then gets blown up. It's lame. Yeah, being totally honest, I'd say that Sleeping Princess is marginally weaker than Blood Rubies as a movie. But it is the closest thing we're ever going to get to my dream idea of Goku versus Dracula because Toei keeps
朋友是一个坚韧不拔的纪录片，在香港这座城市的设置。
Of the three original Dragon Ball movies, I'd say Mystical Adventure is the best, but that's not really stiff competition. It's kind of a weird blend of the Red Ribbon Army arc and the Second World Tournament arc, and those two work surprisingly well together. Chaozu, for some reason, is the Emperor of China in this movie. This is the most relevance Chaozu ever has or ever will have. I think the first half is relatively solid and has a few cool moments, but the entire movie really falls apart by the second half owing to that really bad pacing I mentioned earlier. Like, Goku gets blown away by Mercenary Tao's Dodon Ray, and conveniently he lands right at the top of Korin Tower, and then without any sort of training or anything he just says, nah, I'd win, and kicks Mercenary Tao's ass the next time they fight without any real explanation. And then Arale shows up for like 2 seconds and then fucks off. Cool. It takes a lot of major scenes and images from the manga, but without any of the surrounding context, they end up feeling a lot less impactful, leading to a relatively underwhelming movie. I'm still trying to get over the fact that over the course of the entire franchise history, which has spanned literal decades at this point, this is still the most importance Chaozu is ever going to have.
What did I do to deserve this? I mean, what specifically?
Dead Zone is the first Dragon Ball Z movie, and right off the bat there's a very clear jump in animation quality. I really like the general art direction, and Garlic Jr. and his henchmen all have really cool designs. And I do have to give Garlic Jr. credit for being the first villain, non-canon or otherwise, to successfully use the Dragon Balls to gain immortality. And then I will immediately deduct those same points because even though he made himself totally unbeatable, he then proceeded to give the heroes the sole means with which he could be defeated. Friggin' dumbass. It's perfectly fine and entertaining as far as movies go, certainly a big step up from the last 3 movies, but that's still not really much of an accomplishment. It's still kinda mid.
I'm a gigantic brain!
Most ungentlemanlike.
The absolute nicest thing I can say about World's Strongest is that Dr. Wheelo has one of the coolest designs in the entire Dragon Ball franchise, and it's an absolute crime against nature that it does not get used more often. But considering that the rest of the movie surrounding this really cool design is incredibly underwhelming, and the rest of Wheelo's henchmen are just kinda lame, it's perhaps easy to understand why Toei forget about him basically all of the time.
I'm 3. Thank you.
Tree of Might is undoubtedly the best movie set in this early Dragon Ball Z period, and it has the absolute best movie villain shown thus far. He's not really got stiff competition, but I like Turles quite a lot. Generally speaking, I'm kind of a sucker for the whole dark reflection trope, and Turles being basically what Goku would have turned out like if he never hit his head, that's just a really cool concept as a bad guy. And Turles' henchmen also all have really cool and memorable designs, which is another point in the movie's favour. But the biggest gripe that I personally have with Tree of Might also stems from those same henchmen. Really, Toei? You're gonna have all of Goku's friends show up to fight Turles' henchmen, but they're not allowed to get a single win against the henchmen, just for Goku to beat them all instantly anyway? I know it's a very minor nitpick, and I can't imagine many people other than me care about it that much, but still, it does irk me. Even so, Tree of Might is still the best Dragon Ball movie so far by a considerable margin.
Washing an old person!
Patrick, that's not fun.
It is for me!
The main joke that Team 4-Star used for their rendition of Lord Slug is that the entire movie is basically a rehash of King Piccolo, and they're totally right for saying it. It is King Piccolo, but with none of the charm and a very light coat of Frieza on top of everything. Slug is basically just King Piccolo, but devoid of any charisma, and his henchmen are some of the worst in the whole franchise so far. The only things I like about this movie are as follows. Firstly, Piccolo does get some really cool scenes. Secondly, False Super Saiyan is incredibly cool, and thirdly, Lord Slug's beatdown of Goku is honestly pretty memorable in how brutal it is. Beyond all that though, it's basically just a worse retelling of Tree of Might.
Overruled, Judge, or is it overcooled?
And Cooler takes the crown of best movie villain so far, Frieza's pragmatic, level-headed but equally evil older brother, backed by a trio of distinct and memorable henchmen who all get bodied by Piccolo in one of the best fight scenes in the movie continuity thus far. Aside from its incredibly generic title, there really is a lot to like about Cooler's Revenge. But I do have one major gripe with the movie. Cooler's fifth form, despite having an incredibly sick design, is completely and totally fucking useless. As soon as Goku turns Super Saiyan, he gets whooped even harder than Frieza did, so what's the point of the transformation at all? Cooler should still lose, obviously, but making it that one-sided, I really just don't see the point.
The biggest star enabled me to cheat them! How could this be?
Return of Cooler? Seriously, why did they give these two movies such incredibly similar sounding names? Just isn't very good. It's an ass-ugly movie with some really wonky animation and incredibly unappealing coloring on everything. And the plot itself is just a hodgepodge of ideas cobbled together from other Dragon Ball stories, and the way Goku beats Cooler at the end of this movie is just complete and total nonsense. They bring Cooler back and this is what they do with him? I think the Big Getty Star is really cool on a conceptual level, and that's about as far as my praise will go for this dogshit movie.
Don't you lecture me with your $30 haircut!
There are two really memorable aspects to Super Android 13. Firstly is Android 13's redneck personality that the dub gives him, and secondly is this iconic shot of Goku getting punched in his Dragon Balls. Beyond that, I really don't have much to say about the movie, be it positive or negative. It's a fairly middle-of-the-road flick.
but I'm a genetic freak, and I'm not normal.
With the power of hindsight, it's really not all that hard to figure out why exactly Broly went on to become the big breakout star of the movie continuity. Everything about the guy, from his design, to his personality, to his powers, to that weird glowy green key effect about him, he's just the absolute coolest guy. In movie 8, at least. His sheer, overwhelming presence is a large part as to why the legendary Super Saiyan is such a memorable movie out of a very long line of movies before it. The dude is basically the Saiyan equivalent of the Antichrist, and he proves that much by spending most of his screen time beating the absolute snot out of Goku and his friends. It's one of the best fight scenes in the entire franchise. Broly 1 is definitely one of the top Dragon Ball movies out there, but it does suffer from one major aspect, and that's in how underwhelming the end of the movie is. It's really clear that they wrote themselves into a corner by making Broly so absolutely henched, which makes Goku's method of defeating him by punching him really hard just feel, well, again, underwhelming and undeserved. Ass-pull endings are basically the norm when it comes to Dragon Ball movies, but this is definitely one of the worst of the bunch.
Do what you want, 'cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
I half-jokingly call BoJack Unbound the movie that killed Team 4-Star, which feels at least partially true from my understanding. Apparently they were having a lot of trouble making anything funny out of that movie. And rewatching it now, I can definitely see why it would cause them so much trouble. I'll admit, I do like the opening act with the tournament. It's nice to be able to see the gang relax a little bit, and that punch that Tien landed on Trunks really got my inner Tien fanboy absolutely hyped. But by God, BoJack and his henchmen are some of the most boring bad guys in the entire movie franchise, having next to no personalities beyond evil and smug. And much like with Tree of Might, I absolutely froth at the mouth with hatred to see the Z-Fighters show up to fight the henchmen only to get bodied by the henchmen anyway. It's neat to see Gohan in the leading role for a movie, but that novelty aside, BoJack is incredibly middle of the road.
You know, they say all men are created equal, but you look at me and you look at Small Joe, and you can see that statement is not true.
Given his sheer, overwhelming popularity over the years, Broly is a character who has managed to draw in quite a lot of detractors, but I'll at least go to bat to defend Broly as he appeared in movie 8. The guy was a violent and savage maniac in that movie, of course, but he had a lot of personality and even a degree of tragedy to him. But Broly's Second Coming is definitely where Meme Broly was born. What's Meme Broly, you may ask? Oh, well, he's the version that the fandom seems to really hate, the big lumbering idiot who screams Kakarot and has no real personality beyond being big and strong. Broly's Second Coming absolutely sandblasted away a lot of the personality that Broly used to have, and it's just generally not a very interesting movie to watch. The family Kamehameha is admittedly a really cool moment.
This is terrible.
I think the fandom has come to regard Bio Broly as being the worst Dragon Ball movie out there. You know, with the obvious exception of Dragon Ball Evolution. But perhaps this movie has been misinterpreted and misunderstood for all these years. Maybe Bio Broly is, in fact, a brilliant meta-commentary on the nature of Toei animation as a whole. Taking something that was once popular and cool and twisting it into a horrible, sludge-like shadow of its former self. A very grim, poignant commentary on the very nature of popular media, where once anything gains suitable traction in the minds of people, it will ultimately be destroyed by said popularity. But in all likelihood, it's probably just a terrible garbage movie.
Well, that was anticlimactic.
Fusion Reborn is a much-needed upswing in quality after the last two movies. Janemba, what he lacks in personality, he more than makes up for with his sick-as-hell design and incredibly visually appealing powers. And we got to see Pikkon do stuff in this movie too. Man, I miss Pikkon, he was the coolest. The only major gripe I have with Fusion Reborn comes from the ending, where the titular Fusion, Gogeta, is fused and then just instantly kills Janemba. It feels really anticlimactic to me. I don't know, man, I kind of feel like they could have cut a few minutes from either the fat Gogeta stuff or the stuff with Trunks and Goten fighting Hitler and used that same runtime to have an actual fight with Gogeta and Janemba.
Falcon Punch!
Wrath of the Dragon is the last of the classic Dragon Ball Z movies from the 90s and really is a bit of an end of an era. It's entirely serviceable as far as movies go. Basically just a worse retelling of Boo, but Goku gets a really sick dragon punch at the end at least.
Oh my god, this is happening again!
Path to Power is a little bit like the first 3 Dragon Ball movies I described, being a retelling of events from the manga. In this case, it's kind of a blend of the first Dragon Ball Hunt and the Red Ribbon Army saga, but the movie is well paced, it's easy on the eyes, and Goku's Kamehameha towards the end is one of the best in the entire franchise. It's definitely worth checking out. All these years later, and Dragon Ball Evolution still sucks donkey balls.
Finally, some good fucking food.
In fact, Dragon Ball Evolution sucked such an immense volume of donkey balls that it was a major reason why this movie even exists in the first place. Battle of Gods was a much needed shot in the arm for the entire franchise, basically reviving it. It greatly expanded on both the lore and the cosmology of the Dragon Ball universe, and furthermore it introduced 2 great new characters in the forms of Beerus and Whis. And most shockingly about Battle of Gods, even though Goku got an 11th hour ass-pull superpower, as he often does in these movies, he still loses in the end, which is just genuinely surprising. It's just a really great movie all around.
You that Freezer guy?
I am Lord Frieza, yes?
Awesome! I'ma deck you in the schnoz!
I wish I could say the same for Resurrection F, because I really do not like Resurrection F. I'm not even really against the idea of Frieza having hidden potential and getting super strong, but I do think the method they use to show him getting stronger is just kinda dumb. And the fight that the entire movie is building up towards just isn't really all that great by my estimation.
You, fraction in my face, and I will prove to you that I'm the man with the largest arms in the world!
Good goddamn, but this movie is gorgeous. It's the best looking Dragon Ball movie out of the entire series, and it's not even close. It was certainly a bit of a shock to see them try and make Broly into a canon character, who is more of a gentle giant this time around to the crazy sociopath of classic Broly. The end result is a movie with some great comedy but even more phenomenal action. And more importantly, unlike Fusion Reborn, Gogeta has an actual fight at the end of this movie. Definitely a strong personal favorite of mine.
This looks like a job for Superman.
I'll admit, when Superhero was first unveiled, I was a little bit torn on the visuals. It was kind of a bummer to me they were moving away from the amazing art style used for Broly. But over time, the art style eventually won me over. The title never won me over though. Why not just call it Dragon Ball Super Hero? It's genuinely great to see a movie where Gohan and Piccolo are in the leading roles. I absolutely love Piccolo's new Giga Chad form, though I'm less fond of Beast Gohan. The design just reminds me way too much of that one Kids Next Door Dragon Ball Z parody for me to take it seriously. I also quite like the Gammas as characters, but it's unfortunate I can't say the same about Cell Max. It's the exact same problem that Hirudegarn had in Wrath of the Dragon, where he's basically just a big dumb snarling monster with no personality. Overall though, Superhero makes for a really solid movie, and it's reassuring to see them trying new things. I hope they manage to keep that up with whatever future Dragon Ball movies come out. The Dragon Ball movies are definitely a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to quality, but it has admittedly been fairly fascinating to go back to the start and chart their progression over the years. Going from small, humble recreations of anime episodes to these big global blockbusters. The series is probably more popular now than ever, and in a grand twist of irony, it took one of the worst movies ever made in order for Dragon Ball to have a renaissance that let it have these big global blockbusters. I don't know, I guess the universe is just funny like that sometimes.